Good evening, Fortella, sir. I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Starting off tonight, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a final bid to shore up right-wing support ahead of a close vote, says he will not permit a Palestinian state to be created if he is re-elected. In an interview on Israeli TV, Netanyahu appeared to reverse his previous commitment to a two-state solution. He argued that a Palestinian state would help spread Islamist militancy in the region. He also added that under his watch, the Palestinians would not get the independent state they seek in the occupied territories.
I think that whoever moves to establish a Palestinian state or intends to withdraw from territory is simply yielding territory for radical Islamic terrorist attacks against Israel. This is the genuine reality that was created here in the past few years. Those who do not understand that bury their heads in the sand. The left-wing parties do it, bury their heads in the sand, time and again.
Israelis go to the polls on Tuesday in an early parliamentary election. Opinion polls put the opposition center-left Zionist Union ahead of Netanyahu's right-wing Likud party. Netanyahu is seeking a record fourth term. He has stepped up his nationalist and anti-Arab rhetoric in the final days of the campaign. Many Palestinians and Israelis say Netanyahu's rhetoric shows the desperation of the right in Israel.
I think that the comments of the Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the Israeli occupation, today show the strategy of the right and the extreme right parties of the occupation, who want to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state by taking steps on the ground like continuing the settlements, and that is what Netanyahu has mentioned today. Continuing the settlements prevents negotiations over Jerusalem and cancels the possibility of establishing an independent Palestinian state.
If he said that, he's obviously very worried he's going to lose tomorrow, which, based on what I've been hearing, is something that might well happen. And though I do support the centre-right, I think maybe his time has come to an end.
Mobilizations are continuing in Venezuela against the aggressive actions of the U.S. government. In the latest march, it was rail workers and staff from the Caracas Metro who took to the streets to reject any kind of foreign intervention. Around 3,000 workers expressed their support for the Venezuelan government. It follows the Obama administration's declaration that Venezuela represents a threat to U.S. national security. On Sunday, Venezuela's legislature passed a special law to enable President Nicolas Maduro to deal with any exceptional circumstances presented by U.S. threats against the country. Maduro requested the enabling law in light of Obama's declaration and fresh U.S. sanctions against Venezuelan officials. At a massive rally, President Maduro said he will send U.S. President Barack Obama a letter to demand that the U.S. decree against Venezuela be revoked. Maduro says he hopes to have 10 million Venezuelans sign the letter. That's 1/3 of the population. The Venezuelan president has called on Washington to open a frank dialogue with his government to resolve the dispute. The third round of talks between Cuba and the United States kicked off today as both countries push to reestablish diplomatic relations. The Cuban Foreign Ministry's Chief of U.S. Affairs, Josefina Vidal, and the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hemisphere Affairs, Roberto Jacobson, met as part of the talks. They discussed banking for diplomats and the removing of Cuba from the state sponsors of terrorism list. The move is welcomed by both countries. In what appears to be a further shift in policy, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says the U.S. will have to negotiate with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to find a political transition in Syria.
We are working very hard with other interested parties to see if we can reignite a diplomatic outcome. Why? Because everybody agrees there is no military solution. There is only a political solution. But to get the Assad regime to negotiate, we're going to have to make it clear to him that there is a determination by everybody to seek that political outcome and change his calculation about negotiating. That's underway right now. And I am convinced that with the efforts of our allies and others, there will be increased pressure on Assad.
The European Union has denied any change in Western policy on Syria. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini says a lasting solution to the conflict could be achieved only through a Syrian-led political process.
We are working on lasting solution to the conflict that can only be achieved through Syrian-led political process leading to a transition, which means that obviously you talk to also representatives of the Assad regime. I guess Secretary Kerry's position was in this sense, saying that if you need a Syrian-led transition and negotiation, you have to have all parties implied in the negotiations. I don't think he was referring to Assad himself.
Video clips posted to a social media website appear to show the aftermath of aerial bombings on two residential suburbs of the capital, Damascus. Syria's Air Force carried out airstrikes on Sunday in Douma City, an insurgent stronghold northeast of Damascus. More than 215,000 people have been killed since the start of the conflict in March 2011, around half of them civilians. Iraqi intelligence says it has arrested 31 members of the Islamic State group who were responsible for planning and carrying out 52 terrorist attacks in different areas of Baghdad. The intelligence service said the 31 people arrested are IS members from all parts of Baghdad, as well as areas south and north of the capital. A United Nations investigation into human rights in Eritrea has found, quote, very clear patterns of violations and an absence of the rule of law. Eritrea's poor human rights situation, along with poverty, has been blamed for a huge exodus of migrants from the country. After Syria, Eritrea is the second largest source of migrants making perilous trips across the Mediterranean to Europe.
Most Eritreans have no hope for their future. National service, whether in a military unit or in a civil assignment, is the only thing that from the age of 17 they can expect to spend their life doing, paid between less than $1 and a maximum of $2 a day. On such wages, they struggle to fulfill their basic needs, let alone think about raising a family.
At the start of a meeting of foreign ministers in Brussels, the 28 nations of the European Union are divided over their next move of sanctions against Russia. In July, the existing sanctions will expire and can only be renewed with the approval of all European Union states. The sanctions are in response to Russia's alleged role in the annexation of Crimea and in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. And the situation remains tense near Donetsk as gunfire around the airport continues despite the ceasefire. Under the terms of a peace deal agreed on February 12th, pro-Moscow rebels and Ukrainian government forces were supposed to pull heavy artillery back from the front lines. The conflict has killed nearly 6,000 people since last April. Russian President Vladimir Putin has made his first public appearance in 10 days, and he addressed rumors and speculation about his health. The 62-year-old leader dismissed the rumors as, quote, gossip. Kyrgyzstan President Almazbek Atambayev also vouched for the president's health. He said that Putin had personally driven him around the grounds behind the wheel. In the United States, conservation and food safety groups have announced their intention to sue the Environmental Protection Agency. It's in response to a newly approved insecticide that could be harmful to wildlife, including butterflies. According to the plaintiffs, the agency is failing to protect threatened species such as butterflies, amphibians, and birds from new agricultural poisons. Some of these species are pollinators, which are necessary for world agriculture. The New York Cosmos have announced a March 2nd match in Havana, Cuba against the Cuban national soccer team. It comes 3 months after Cuban President Raul Castro vowed to restore diplomatic ties severed 54 years ago. The Cosmos will be the first U.S. professional soccer club team to play in Cuba since 1978.
I, for one, have always believed in the power of sport to bring people together and to bring down barriers. And I'm very fortunate throughout my career, I've personally been able to witness many of these instances firsthand. We're therefore honored to be the first professional team in sports to visit Cuba since President Obama's historic opening of diplomatic relations.
The 2015 Cape Epic Cycling event attracts the biggest names in mountain biking, and it's happening right now in South Africa. There you see it there. The demanding 8-day mountain bike adventure is 739 kilometers long, with 16,000 meters of climbing from the University of Cape Town to Marindal Wine Estate in Durbanville. About 1,200 cyclists have signed up to ride the grueling race.
Tom, I'd love to. You come do the announcing, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sassel Racing's Yolandi de Villiers and Janka Kizikstevkova.
A rare white lion cub has been born in a zoo in southern Brazil. The 2-month-old cub, which was rejected by her mother just after birth, has been named Clara and is reportedly in good health. Clara's parents were brought to the Brazilian zoo from Pretoria, South Africa in 2011. More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.